So today we're going to talk about working with Visual Studio for developing Java code. So just before we start, so that you know, I work for Red Hat. I am the project lead for several projects, including the Java language server and the hybrid mobile tooling. And then I've been doing a committer with Eclipse for 17 years now. Started with the WTP server project, and I am a committer on Apache Cordova, which I'm not doing anything active there.
Yeah, I'm Fred. I'm also working for Red Hat, and I work on developer tooling, so based on Eclipse. I'm the project lead for M2E WTP, which is the Maven integration for Java IE. I'm also a committer on the M2E and the Eclipse JDTLS project, which we're going to talk about tonight.
So, have you used Visual Studio Code? Do you like it? Anyone who didn't use it? Okay. You didn't use it, Max? All right. Now we know. So, the thing about Visual Studio Code, so if you look at the current IDE space you have, or desktop IDE space, you have your full-blown IDEs like Eclipse, IntelliJ. Someone was using NetBeans. So they're all there. And then you have your text editors like Atom, Vim. The thing about Visual Studio Code, it actually labels itself as a coding editor rather than a text editor. So Visual Studio kind of falls between IDE and text editor, but it tries to remain in the text editor side more. So for those who haven't looked into Visual Studio Code before, I'm going to just do a quick demo of the features so that you know, you get the idea of what I mean by a coding editor. So what I'll do is, that's one of the best features I think that Visual Studio Code has. It has a command line that you can use to even start the Visual Studio Code in different modes. So if you want to just compare two files, you can just give the name of the two files and tell it to compare. It will just open it on the comparison view, for instance. And in here, I'm just opening a single Java file. And this is a very funny case. Let me just go here and show you. So if you look at the folder, there's nothing there. It's just one single Java file that basically just sits there, and there's no package structure or anything. So let me just try to open that on Visual Studio Code. It opens up, and the interesting thing is, if you were using a full-blown IDE, you wouldn't be getting any Java functionality by opening this single file. It's like it doesn't know anything about the class path. It would complain about the packaging and so on and so forth. So on Visual Studio Code for Java, what we are doing is we are creating this mode where you can just open up a file. Remember, this is more of a text editor than a full IDE. You can just open up a file, and then the Java functionality is there. So you can actually just hover over stuff, if you can see it. Or you can actually get some sort of code assist from what it can gather. So for instance, if you want to do let's try a system out. It will give you that assist, and if you want to get the class path from JDK classes, the code assist, it's going to be there. And for instance, things like you remember disabled. You disabled my Vim. Yeah, so for instance, you can get the outline of the file. You can, take a quick look at the file and so on and so forth. So all of this is just working for you without VS Code actually knowing anything about your project, right? Yeah, yeah, documentation, yeah, thanks. Yeah, it can even do a bit more than this, but let me show you one more thing. Just so if you want to go to the string class, you can just say that, oh, okay, I want to look at the string class and what it is. And there is the whole, you can just browse to that source code from here and yeah, see the documentation and so on and so forth. So all of this is working. And as you have seen, I just typed in the name of the Java file. There is no class paths involved and nothing, and everything is just, for the basic single file editing case, it works. And funny enough, many of our users, I think we have something like 77,000 now. Yeah, around 77,000 active users of VS Code Java. I'm going to say half of them is just using this. They don't really care about the class paths and so on and so forth. So when they need to do a quick fix, they just go in, start up the editor, do the quick fix, come back, or just look at something. So.
Syntax errors.
Oh yeah, we do have, yeah, you can even get the syntax errors as well. Let me just break something here. Yep. So you get the full syntax errors. You won't get any of the class path errors or anything that is related to that, but the Java syntax errors will be there. Well, we'll come back to more demos. So how do we do this? How does this work? Remember, I talked about being the project lead for the Java language server. So basically what we are using is something called a language server, a Java language server. And a language server is basically an abstraction between your language and your editor. So a language server is defined so that the editor doesn't need to know anything about the language. It just knows that, oh, give me the errors on that file. It just tells it that, and then language server just gives it a bunch of error objects. And the editor at that point has no idea about Java. So the flow basically, just to give you an idea, the user just opens a document, and then the editor just says to the language server, oh, user just opened this document. And in that case, language server just says, oh, okay, I need to initialize my inner workings. In the case of Java, we look into any files that we can configure the class path from. So if you have like a POM XML, then we just say, oh, okay, I'll just look into this POM XML and initialize it so that I know what sort of class path this project needs. And then the user starts to edit the document, and then the language server starts to receive this did change events. And the server at that point just says, oh, okay, there is some sort of a change happening, and let me just calculate the diagnostics, the errors for this, if there are any syntax errors. And then if it finds one, it publishes those to the editor, and the editor just displays it. How the editor displays it, we don't know, we don't care on the server. We just say that, oh, okay, just take this. So the advantage is, now you have a single language tooling that you can use with Eclipse, you can use it with VS Code, you can use it on Vim, Eclipse Che, Emacs, and these are actual Java language server users right now. Oh, and Adam. I haven't seen a Sublime one.
There's a work in progress.
There is one? Okay, yeah. So the language server,
Does it mean it has
No, it is a server, but it's a server in the sense that it's a client-server architecture. So it's not. It doesn't. No, it's not a remote. It just runs locally as a process. Basically, in our setup right now, it just uses name pipes to communicate with the editor. The thing about language server protocol, it started from Visual Studio Code and moved into, well, basically when we jumped into, that's a funny story. We were looking for something like this at the same time, and Microsoft came to us around the time that we announced our collaboration on RHEL with Microsoft. And they said that, would you like to, is this something interesting to you? And I was like, okay, yeah, this is exactly what we were working on. Let's do a demo. So we basically created the Java language server in a month or so, and did that as a demo on Red Hat Summit. Red Hat Summit. The good thing about the protocol is it's totally open source. It's under MIT license. The protocol itself is under Creative Commons, so it's the document part of it is under Creative Commons, and the code is under MIT. And the protocol itself is based on JSON RPC, so it's pretty standard. So we talked about JDTLS. So what does JDTLS actually use? It uses JDT, the Java part of Eclipse. It uses a library called LSP4j, so it's the language server implementation in Java. We use M2E and the build chip to provide Gradle support. And when it loads, this is our page in Visual Studio Marketplace where you can get language server for VS Code for Java. It has something like 570,000 and something downloads. It's one of the, I'd say, top 20 extensions for VS Code. Yeah. So now I'm going to hand it over to Fred so that you can do the real demo.
Today we're going to see how to develop a Java application with VS Code. So it's a very complicated application. I'm going to open it with the command line. And basically what we have here is a Maven-based application. It's based on Spring Boot. It's a demo app, and basically displays, and it's a CRUD app to create and display messages. So we have our Java code here in the src main Java directory structure. We have resources, static resources, web pages, and whatnot. So it's based on Maven. So we have the POM XML here. So we're gonna open now the was the message controller that Gokim opened earlier. And let's see what we have now. So now we have a full-blown project open in VS Code. So because the language server recognized that there's a POM XML at the root of the project, the whole project was configured with the proper class path. And now, if I hover over the different types on my in my class, I can see all the Javadoc. All these Javadoc is coming from the sources that have been automatically downloaded for all the dependencies of my project. I have, so I'm still able to control click and navigate through all these classes. Same thing as before. Something we didn't show earlier, if you open a type, let's say the shell from Nashorn, this file, for instance, doesn't have sources. The JDK doesn't provide sources for Nashorn. So in that case, we display a stub source with empty methods, but it gives you an idea of the content of the file, how it's done. Okay, so let's go back to our controller. So we have, let me check that. We have errors shown in the problems view. So if I click on them, it will bring me to the problematic file. In that case, these are unused imports. So you can see the light bulb here. If I click on it, I get something called code actions. In Eclipse lingo, it's called quick fixes. So I can organize imports to remove everything. I got a nice stack trace, but ignore that. Pretend that it didn't happen. So we have support for different kind of warnings and compilation errors. For instance, if I break this file, I'm going to change something here. If I save it, you can see my problems here. Problems view is instantly refreshed with a whole bunch of compilation errors. So this happens because behind the scenes we're using the JDT compiler, which is an incremental compiler. So every time we save one file, we don't have to rebuild everything by hand by calling a build command. Saving the file, same as Eclipse, the file is recompiled automatically, and all the errors are propagated in the workspace. So I can see that in that message controller, the save method doesn't exist. So I could, if I wanted, use a quick fix to create that missing method here. It's been created with a weird comment here, but it's not really interesting. But so we have the extension provides some code actions like create missing types, missing declarations, organize imports. All these new code actions are actually will be available in tomorrow's release because we're releasing tomorrow. And we'll get more and more of these as time goes by. It's actually, all these code actions have been provided by Microsoft, who generously helped us with the Java language server and the Visual Studio Code extension. They have four people right now working to help us on the server.
So the interesting thing about Visual Studio Code is the Visual Studio Code is actually implemented by a team of people who implemented Eclipse. Eric Gama is the lead for Visual Studio Code, who was the lead for Eclipse JDT back when he was working for IBM. So what happened was they just contacted us and that, oh, we have some cycles that we can share with you. Would you like us to do some Java coding? And I was like, yeah, sure. So this is the quick assist, actually, the code actions actually came out of that work.
Okay, so if I fix my file and save it, all the problems are gone because the class has been recompiled and everything is just instant. So I think it provides a really nice user experience.
Fred showed the code lenses. That doesn't exist on most.
Yes. So here we have a link to 3 references. If I click on it, I can see my that my message repository class is being referenced in message controller and DevOps application. And I can, there's some really nice feature here where from that particular small window, I can edit the target file. If I save it, I can see the same, the file has been actually modified here. So I don't want to save that. All right, so what next? So we were looking at compilation errors in real time. How about Maven support? So we have we also support some kind of feedback from the POM editor. It's really basic, but if you say, if I add a version to my dependency here that doesn't exist, so let's say 99, save the file. So the server detected that the POM has been modified and asked me if I want to trigger a synchronization of the project state. We don't see much. The screen resolution is too small here. So in that case, I just modified a dependency. Simply saving the file is enough for me for the server to update its state. But if I was to change, for instance, the Java version to something like 1.7 or 9, I would have to explicitly tell the server to update its project configuration. So in the case of dependencies, it's not necessary, but for other more profound changes, you would want to either always change your update your project configuration or not. It depends on. Yes.
Is this a limitation, or this is fundamental to how language server protocol works?
No, this is so we had to do that because there's no equivalent for automatically updating a Gradle file, for instance. If you change a Gradle file in Eclipse, because we're pasting our tools on the Gradle support for Eclipse, there's no automatic update of the class path when you change your Gradle file. So we have to provide a kind of a command that works for every tool, every build tool, so that we can manually trigger this configuration update.
So it's at the protocol level there, the limitation.
So this is not, so the update command, it doesn't exist at the language server protocol itself. It's an extension of the language server protocol that's implemented by and defined by the Java language server. So if you're developing your own language server, you can define your own commands specific to your language. All right, so we have error reporting at the POM XML level. So the artifact is missing here. So let's fix that here. And we can do some other changes, like let's say I break my class path by removing a dependency. If I change my POM, okay, never. I should see some problems appear eventually. Where in my tests? There. Dependencies changed. The test dependencies are missing now. So I got a whole bunch of compilation errors, similar to the idea of updating the class path in real time. So I can fix that, save it, and gone. So it's really hack on your code, save it, and everything's updated on the fly. So it's a really nice user experience. All right, so we have this Spring Boot application. We can write some code. How do we run it? So let's do. There's a shortcut in VS Code. It's called Command-Shift-B to build the project. So at that point, there's no build task defined. So I'm going to configure one. It's a Maven task. And VS Code proposes a template for Maven tasks. It's coming from VS Code itself, not the Java extension. And we have a build command here. Is build command equals true. So we're gonna just skip tests for this one. Oops. And we are gonna call the Maven wrapper. All right. So I save it. Command-Shift-B. And it builds, and it builds successfully. All right, so we can also run the tests with the test command. Unfortunately, there's no shortcut assigned to this build command, test command. So I can go to the preferences, keyboard shortcuts, search for tests, run the test task. All right, I'm going to add a Command-Shift-T. Enter. It didn't work. Yes, it did. All right. Let's try that. So Command-Shift-T is now running my tests. So I can build, I can run tests. This is all nice. Now I want to do the real deal and actually run my application. So at that point, I could create a new task to execute the Spring Boot run command. It's not actually a good idea at that point because Spring Boot run is a long-running command, and for some reason, VS Code just supports only one running task at any given time. So we don't want to run a task within VS Code. So I'm going to use the terminal to run Maven W Spring Boot run. All right, so this super app starts in 3.3 seconds. Let's see how it looks. It's a super duper messages app. I can create messages. Hello, T-Jug. What's up? Save it. And I needed to delete that before the demo. All right, not a problem. Let's go back. Okay, so I'm gonna search for my type message. This one. All right, Command-Shift-O. It's probably get message, get summary. Oh, it's not here, but there's a reference. All right, it's here. So I can delete that line, save the file, and okay, where is it? I didn't save the controller. Where is it? There it is. So the server restarted in 0.7 seconds. actually, Spring Boot provides a thing called DevTools, where whenever something in a class path changes, the class loader for Spring Boot is thrown away and a new one is created. So you can do your modifications in your workspace, save the file, and a new app will be restarted in less than 1 second. So let's see if I can modify that. All right, works. Okay, so what else can I show you? All right, let's see if I can. I'm gonna create a new one. Hello, it's Fred. Yes, code rocks. All right, everything still works. So because Spring Boot uses the DevTools, it actually launches a live reload server. So I can enable live reload on my browser, and I can go and in my editor change some code, and we'll see what happens. So here, let's see. I'm gonna loop over my messages. That's a message. M messages, and I'm gonna tweak my message. All right, so I have a quick assist, so quick fix. So if you want to use the keyboard to call the code actions or quick fixes, the shortcut is command dot. I'm going to create a tweak method, and in this case, I'm going to just change the summary to summary uppercase to uppercase. There. Let's see if I change it. Magic. All right.
How does the live reload work for the browser specifically? What is it?
So the live reload is basically it's a server that is running along the Spring Boot application, and the browser is connected to that server. So whenever a change is detected, Spring Boot tells the live reload server, hey, a change has been done. So the server will say, okay, everyone is connected to me, please refresh. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is Lombok support. Anyone ever used Lombok here? All right. So basically Lombok allows you to get rid of a whole bunch of crap in Java. So the idea is to, instead of writing getters and setters and equals method and a whole bunch of bloat, you let Lombok generate all the bytecode for you. So how does it work in VS Code Java? So there are two things to do. One is to add Lombok to the class path of your project, obviously. So I got it here. And the second thing to do is to tell the language server to use Lombok, because basically what we want to do is to edit our files, and the editor needs to know that the bytecode has been modified. So for that reason, we need to modify the way the server is launched. And in order to do that, I'm going to open the preferences. So settings. Yeah, it's really not user friendly here. Okay, so here in my workspace settings, I got this preference. So if you do, you also have in VS Code, you also have auto completion on preference keys. So everything Java, you type Java, and you have the list of all the preferences available for the Java server. So in this case, I want to define the JDTLS VM args. All right. So in that case, I'm going to uncomment this one. And the idea is to define the Lombok jar as a Java agent. So you need actually two, the Java agent and another one, the execute class path, two arguments. So when I save my configuration, we detected that the server needs to be restarted. So let's do that now. The server is starting pretty fast. So let's go back to our message class. So let's do something like open problems. We're going to get rid of that and all the rest. So now if I save my file, I should see some errors, all right, as expected. Oops. And now I just need to add a @data annotation. Save it, and everything works still. Okay, let's see if the app still runs. Okay, let's create a new message. Yep, still working. That's about the extent of what I wanted to show you. So with VS Code Java, you can really do a lot with a text editor on steroids and Java. And I think it gives you a really nice turnaround when it comes to developing microservices-like applications, specifically with Spring Boot. Back to you.
Yeah, we can just show I think we only have the roadmap to show.
All right. So what's next? What's next? Java debugger. This is a big piece. So we were talking earlier about how Microsoft is helping us with 4 people working on the Java language server project, and they actually have a bunch of people in China working on the Java debugger. So this is coming. We also need and want to do add more refactoring. So we saw some good actions here, but we need to add to provide support for renaming classes, for instance, where you rename the file and then all the type is changed, so you propagate all the changes to all your workspace. And finally, we want to expose at some point some formatting options. So currently, if you really want a fine-grained formatting tuning, you need to go in your project, View Explorer. So in your project, there's a settings directory with JDT core prefs. If you open this project in Eclipse, you would see a whole bunch of formatting options, and you would need to define the same options in this pref file. So this is not really obvious because you're modifying Eclipse files while you're using VS Code. So at some point, we probably need to expose some of these formatting options from the VS Code settings. All right, so if you really want to use and test our Java support for Visual Studio Code, just either open a Java file, and Visual Studio Code will recommend that you install our extension, or you can install it directly from the command palette, typing x install Java. If you want to contribute to our projects, so we have two projects. We have the Visual Studio Code extension itself and the server. So the Visual Studio Code extension lives at redhat.-developer on GitHub, and the language server is under the Eclipse umbrella. So either one of these two repositories can contribute pull requests, open bugs, enhancement requests. Go ahead. So we'd love to spread Java language server usage over other editors. So we know that there are some work in progress with Atom, Emacs, Vim, Sublime Text. If you can try their work in progress, go ahead. Tell us what you think. And if you want to test that awesome demo, code exists on GitHub under the Evericon, my username, VS Code Java demo.